If you're planning on buying a home and obtaining a residential mortgage, you're going to need to budget for more than just the down payment on the home. And that's because there are additional costs that come with getting a residential mortgage that you need to know about. So what are these costs? We'll speak to them in general terms first, and then we'll go more specific. But the three categories that you want to be aware of are closing costs, reserve and prepaid items, and transfer stamps. Now let's take a deeper look at these. The first additional cost outside of our down payment is a category that we call closing costs. Now, closing costs is a general term that we use to describe a whole bunch of different line items that will actually be part of your loan. So as you can see here, some of the common ones that are part of your closing costs are going to be your title fees, your recording fees, your processing, your underwriting, the cost of your appraisal. If you're using a real estate attorney, the cost of your real estate attorney. So when we have these closing costs, which we know are a part of every residential mortgage, we want to make sure that we're allocating enough funds. So the problem at this point is that because you haven't selected a home, we have to simply use a ballpark estimate until we can refine these numbers. So if you're purchasing a home up to a $400,000 price point, you can expect to pay roughly $4,500 in closing costs. Now again, this is an estimate at this point, which we always estimate high, and as you find a home, we get under contract, we refine these numbers, and then they become an exact amount. So closing costs is the first category that you want to budget and allocate additional funds for. Next up is a category that we refer to as prepaid and reserve items. Now depending which state you're obtaining a loan in will differ from what I'm about to tell you here. The example that I'm using is for Illinois specifically. So make sure if you're purchasing in a different state that you check in with your loan originator on what these costs are and how they might differ. But in Illinois, we're required to do the following anytime that we're obtaining a loan that has less than 20% down. The first thing that we're gonna do and be required to do is to pay our homeowner's insurance in full for the year. In addition to this, we're gonna pay 2 months worth of homeowner's insurance. Yes, that is in addition to the full policy that's paid. We're gonna also put aside 2 months worth of real estate taxes. And then depending on what day of the month we close, we're gonna have to pay the remainder of the interest for that month. So as we're budgeting for these items that we know are going to be paid in order for us to close the loan, on a purchase price up to $400,000, we want to budget and allocate roughly $2,500 to $3,000 for these prepaid and reserve items. The last category that we want to budget and allocate funds for is something called transfer stamps. Now this may not apply to your purchase depending on where you end up buying. And that's because majority of the time, transfer stamps are something that is paid for by the seller. However, there are certain towns that require the buyer to pay transfer stamps. So a good example of this is if you're purchasing in the city of Chicago. So the city of Chicago will actually hit both the seller and the buyer for transfer stamps. So how much, you ask? Chicago charges $3.75 for every $500 worth of purchase price. So if you're purchasing a $500,000 home, you're going to pay $3,750 in transfer stamps at closing. So again, although this likely will not apply to you, if you're looking in a city that is going to require buyer paid transfer stamps, you absolutely want to factor this cost in to the total cost of your loan. So let's put this all together and answer the question that we're all here for. How much does it actually cost to buy a home? We've already covered that it's going to be the total of your down payment plus your closing costs plus your prepaid and reserve items plus your transfer stamps if they apply. So let's use a real life scenario. Let's say that you're purchasing a home for $400,000 and putting a 10% down payment. You're going to have $40,000 in down payment. We're going to budget another $4,500 for your closing costs, an additional $2,500 for your prepaid and reserve items, and let's assume that you're not purchasing in a city that requires you to pay any transfer stamps. When we add the total of these numbers, that's what it will actually cost you to buy your home and obtain a residential mortgage. Now you may be saying, is there anything that can be done in this process to lower those closing costs? There absolutely is, but that's a video for another time. So if you're interested in that, please make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and maybe even throw a comment in there. And I'll see you back here for the next video where I go into different ways that you can have the seller cover your closing costs or different ways that you can actually build it into your interest rate. We'll see you on the next one.